Good morning, grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. BlenderHD. You're going to follow me on Twitter, Monday, September 16th. We'll be taking a review of yesterday's Week 2 NFL DFS slate. And join with me, as always, on Mondays with McCool, James McCool, the co-author with me of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. If you want to learn the fundamentals, game theory of DFS, go check out our 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Give me those thumbs. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know always when we go live. James, we had we give us your thumbs. Yes, James, we had a slate yesterday where you put it on Twitter. I think it describes most slates. You put it out there as if the slate like this it was special. Maybe you inferred that a lot of the chalk got there, but not the chalk that you played, right? And truthfully, that describes most slates where people think, we always preach lineups, not players, right? It's not about picking players. And it's not about, do you fade this guy? Is this good chalk? Is this bad chalk? Is this over-owned? Is this under-owned? But typically, even in GPPs and even in large field GPPs like the Millie Maker, which, had 205,000 entries, that the winning lineups are going to be lineups that project well, that are lower owned, which means they're not going to be high projected, but they're not going to be low projected. And they're not going to necessarily be all single digit owned players. So winning GPP lineups are going to be almost every slate a combination of chalky plays that got there and 1, 2, 3 low owned plays that had ceiling outcomes. And it just comes down to how you build your lineups and which lineups have which chalky, high projected players, and which 3% owned players do you play that other people don't. And sometimes it works out that it's like, in this lineup, I'm not playing Jordan Mason, but I'm playing Breece Hall. But in this lineup, I'm playing Cooper Kupp, but I'm not playing Malik Neighbors. And in this lineup, I'm playing Chris Godwin, but I'm playing him in a stack and then not with Breece Hall. Like, you're doing things like that, but sometimes, especially for you, if you're playing 3 lineups, I played 20. Sometimes you end up having 3 lineups where the chalk that you played didn't get there, and the chalk that you played didn't get there, and the chalk that you didn't play did get there, and you just move on to the next week and whatever strategic choices you want to make. So let's talk about it. James, what I'm assuming you had a lot of Cooper Kupp. I'm assuming you played Cooper Kupp and you didn't play Malik Neighbors, Chris Godwin. I mean, it's hard not to play Jordan Mason, but maybe you didn't play him either. And it's like, did you create a group or anything where you're like, I'm not going to play more than you're not going to play Kupp and Mason in the lineup together?
So I was very deliberate about the way that I combine these things. So I did have Cooper Kupp. I had Jordan Mason in all 3 of my lineups. I didn't see any reason to get off of him. I didn't see any reason at all. If I'd have had 10 lineups, maybe I get off him in 1, maybe 2, but I was going to have a lot of him. I did have Chris Godwin. I did not have Breece Hall, but that's because I went with lower price running backs overall. I went with Jordan Mason and Zach Charbonnet, who I was stoked that he was under 15% owned, but I thought when the cards would flip that he would be above 15% owned. So I was prepared to have him at high ownership, and I didn't care. I did not have Malik Neighbors. That one was a mega tilt fest for me. I didn't have Deebo Samuel specifically because I had Jordan Mason instead, and I did make a rule to avoid those two together. I had Rashee Rice. I had all of these pieces, but I didn't have the low-owned pieces that I needed around them to help me in the field. So what I meant by that tweet of like, you have the chalk, but you have the wrong chalk. Like you have the high owned players, but you have the wrong high owned players. You're right that's a large amount of slates, but I think that what I could have said is that in a slate like the one that we just had, it's one thing to have like 5, 6, 7 high owned players and mix and match those and like end up right on 3 of them and wrong on 4 of them, or whatever. The hard part comes in, and it's the reason why I don't like NBA, where there's like 20 high owned players. Like the pool is really condensed in terms of players that are over 10 to 15% owned. And then what happens then is like, and if any of those players go off and you don't have them, it hurts you magnitudes more than if there were less high owned players and you didn't have one of them. So the Malik Neighbors thing, I was playing in the power sweep. I was in the 150, and he was only 17% owned in the Millie Maker. He was 31% owned in the 150, which if you didn't have him, you were so far behind the 8 ball going into the late part of the games that like you basically had to get off Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams and like all of the guys, because you needed a chance.
You just had to switch Cooper Kupp to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right. Yeah. You had to make a swap. You had to swap. You had to swap. Granted, doing that, like you go from Cooper Kupp, who's projected for 21 fantasy points, to Marvin Harrison, who's projected for, I'm not sure what the industry aggregate was, but probably 11 fantasy points or something, like dropping 10 fantasy points there. And that feels awful, but you have to do stuff like that if you're behind the 8 ball. But that situation with Malik Neighbors, or even, with Rashee Rice was at 20% owned in the 150. He was like the 9th highest owned player in the 150 or something. Like he wasn't even like what we would consider chalk. He was just a high owned player. So when the ownership gets so condensed around like 20, 22, 23 players, it magnifies the amount of damage that those players do to you when they do well and you don't have them. So I think that's what I was really trying to convey with that tweet, is like, I hate slates. And it's the reason why I hate NBA, where there's a really condensed ownership pool around like 25 players, where if any of them go off and you don't have them, it hurts you more for the pivots that you made. It doesn't help when the pivots that I made were like 3 to 5% owned and they sucked, right? Like when that happens, that it sucks. But that's the game that we play. You make a pivot from a 25% owned player down to a 5% owned player. You hope the 25% owned player has the floor outcome and the 5% owned player has the ceiling outcome. And that's how you win GPPs. That's what happened with Alvin Kamara Jr. versus Breece Hall. That's what happened with Marvin Harrison Jr. versus, I can't think, somebody off the top of my head. Who?
Right. Against everyone. So your 3 lineups,
yeah.
What did you build around? What was your overarching kind of macro strategy that you were building around for your 3 lineups? Because I had one for my 20. Yeah. So what did you have for your 3? Because I think where our strategies were the complete opposite of one another.
You think so? Okay. So I thought the chalk was really good this week, actually. In all the content that I wrote, I basically said, yeah, Breece Hall's a really good play. Jordan Mason's a really good play. Cooper Kupp's a really good play. Like all of these guys are really good plays. So my strategy mostly was just to deploy them around lower owned stacks or lower owned stack types. So for instance, I had
so what were your 3 stacks in your 3 lineups? What like stacks, either team or game stack did you play?
So I had a game stack of Detroit Tampa Bay on the Detroit side, which sucks. I had a Baltimore stack, which was a skinny with Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and Brock Bowers, with the Bowers-Flowers connection, which was okay outside of Lamar Jackson, underwhelming. And then I also had a Ram stack with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Demarcus Robinson, with a comeback of Trey McBride. So it's like I played highly projected teams that had good team totals and took advantage of the chalk in a way that was going to give me relative value if it worked. But Blender, it didn't work very well.
I'm only laughing, James. I'm only laughing because those are literally the 3 things that I didn't like. Yeah, I set out not to do.
Oh, really? What did you do? What did you do?
Like literally, I mean, outside, obviously the Ravens. I mean, I just didn't play anyone from that game. I purposely played no one from the Tampa Bay Detroit game.
Okay.
Purpose.
Sure.
Like I'm not.
I
I
can
ain't
see
playing
that.
Godwin, right? I ain't playing Evans. I ain't playing any line. I'm not playing Almond Ross. I'm not playing any. If I was gonna play them, I'm playing them as 5 of them at once.
So that's let me clarify. I did that.
Okay.
And I did Goff with and I did fade Amon-Ra St. Brown. I did Goff with Jameson Williams and Laporta
Okay.
with Godwin and Mike Evans on the other side. So even though I went with that stack, like I
At
avoided
least you
Amon-Ra St.
overstacked it.
Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I'll give
overstacked.
you a pass for that. But I didn't want to play these guys as one-offs.
No.
I didn't want to play I just thought my attitude about that game, and if I was going to stack, it would be from the Mayfield side because it's more condensed. I just felt that even though the game environment, everyone's like, oh, it's a high total, everything like that. There's just so many pieces on the Lions. Gibbs, Montgomery, Williams, Laporta, Amon-Ra. Like, it's quite possible the Lions put up 34 points and no one gets there. And no one has more than 20 points to their name because it gets all spread out. So I wanted other people to go. Feel free to go and do that. Godwin, of course, had a great first half and then did nothing in the second half. He was fine. My FanDuel Cash lineup loved Godwin. So I did great on FanDuel Cash. So I didn't care about that. But secondly, I purposely, Rams, I said I'm not going to play a Rams stack because so many people are playing Cooper Kupp as a one-off. Like quarterback, is Stafford going to put up 30-plus points? Stafford never puts up 30-plus points. So it's like, I didn't even feel the need to do that. And Parkinson was going to be too owned at tight end. So I just said, screw it. In my 20 lineups, I actually only had 2 lineups that had Cooper Kupp in it. Only 2 lineups. Wow. Because Jordan Mason I had in like 60% of my lineups because $5,200 running back with a 75-yard rushing prop and a minus 200 touchdown scoring. I'm not screwing around with that. In general, in NFL DFS GPPs, going down at running back and up at wide receiver is typically I don't like playing cheap wide receivers that have no ceiling, right? That have like, if they do well, they get 12 points, right? Yoshibus, right? 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 14 points. Like, unless you get like ceiling games from like your 8K guys, like that's not going to do enough. So I built around the number one game environment that I had in my 20 lineups was Cowboys Saints.
Okay,
so
sure, I can buy that.
The problem is that the Cowboys didn't do their job because I played a quarter of my lineups were Prescott, Lamb, Schoonmaker stacks. Obviously, Lamb is leveraged on Kupp and Schoonmaker's leverage on Parkinson, and Dak is not much owned. And then in those lineups, I have either Kamara or Shaheed in those lineups. Sounds great. Another thing that I built around was Daniel Jones and Malik Neighbors.
That sucks.
So I had 5 Daniel Jones lineups. I had Malik Neighbors, and I didn't even bother with like run backs or anything just for the Commanders. I played some Jaden Daniels plus Ertz plus Neighbors.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 games I was targeting the most. And then I went under on Breece Hall. I went over on Charbonnet. I also had a bunch of Jerome Ford, which didn't work out all that well.
That was a good play.
And I've also played a lot of Niners. So I was playing a lot of Mason plus Ayuk. I played Purdy plus Samuel plus Kittle. Like lineups like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't play a lot of Rashee Rice unless it was with Mahomes because I thought Mahomes stacks were owned enough that most Mahomes stacks have Rashee Rice, and if Rashee Rice has 30 points, then I lose anyway to the Mahomes stack, the Mahomes Bengals lineups. I played 2 Burrow I played Rashee Rice with the Burrow side, so like something like Burrow, Chase, Gesicki, Rice, Burrow, Yoshibus, Gesicki, Rice, like that type of lineup. But I played a lot of CeeDee Lamb. I played a lot of Shaheed. I played a lot of Neighbors. It's like, how did you not win $1 million or whatever? I don't know.
Well, I mean, and the reason why you didn't win $1 million is because every other good play went off too.
Right. Well, That's correct. And I also did not have I did not have a Jackson Smith and Jigba. I didn't have a Seahawks wide receiver. I didn't have a tight Brock Bowers or Devontae Adams. Like CeeDee Lamb scored 19 points. It's like CeeDee Lamb doesn't do anything for you. He was $8,800. So like that's kind of the thing. Prescott is a $6,700 quarterback. So like in all those lineups, I needed, Packers defense did fine as my cheap defense, but like I didn't have J.K. Dobbins at 5,400. Which let's get the position by position, and let's talk about over-owned, under-owned, what we expected, what we didn't. I don't know about you, but I did not have J.K. Like, dude, I didn't play J.K. Dobbins when I thought he was going to be 15% owned. Now that flipped over the cards, he's 27.5% owned in the millie. Like, if you showed me that before I was just like, okay, I'll play other running backs instead. So I was shocked at that ownership. And also just take a look at the running. We pointed it out last week. Outside of Kamara, who obviously, put up 47 points.
Yeah.
Like look at, here's the highest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 running backs. And look at the range of outcomes between them.
Yeah.
Some are lower prices, so you'd rather have them. But like, if you just play any of these two out of 8 of these running backs, you were probably fine.
Yeah.
And it just came down to, did you get ceiling wide receivers and the right defense and tight end? Like if you said, "Oh, I'm gonna play James Conner instead of Breece Hall," it's like, well, you got 22 points and Breece Hall got 24. I'm gonna play Derrick Henry over Kyron Williams. Well, congratulations on your extra 1.4 points, right? I'm gonna play Zach Charbonnet instead of J.K. Dobbins. Well, I mean, yeah, J.K. Dobbins scored 6 more points, say 6 more points, but that isn't like that dramatic,
right?
So, like, we go down here, like Ramondre Stevenson, 6,200. I mean, even Josh Jacobs.
It's all the same score. They all scored 17
Ryan Robinson. I mean, these are all guys that I considered playing. Ryan Robinson, 17 points. Right? If you wanted to take a shot at David Montgomery in a good game environment, 17 points.
Yeah.
Right? Devin Singletary on as leverage on Malik Neighbors, 15 points. I mean, like you take a look at all these running backs. I mean, some duds. Some 7, some whatever. But outside of Kamara, like running back is like, if you ate the chalk, you did great. If you didn't eat the chalk, you probably did great also. So like, getting leverage at running back, I mean, may not matter that much, right?
It hasn't mattered yet. It'll matter. Like we know that every.
I know. I'm saying on the other. I'm not saying there's no reason not to play it. I'm saying there's almost no reason not to fade it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's people are talking a lot about like the change to defensive schemes and the too high safety stuff and everything. Like,
the NFL's never going to have any scoring again. Apparently,
no. Nobody will score. No wide receivers are good, and running backs are the only thing that matter. But yeah, look at those scores. Right, you could have played anyone this week, really, that made sense and been fine. This week was completely not decided. I had Jordan Mason and Zach Charbonnet in all 3 of my lineups because 11K for 40 plus touches was great. But if I didn't have Charbonnet, I would have played Dobbins, or I would have played Ford, or I would have played X, Y, Z, Y. I would have played any of these guys. And
what was your ownership projection on Dobbins?
It was 9%.
Right. Like what? Like I had Dobbins higher than I had Dobbins at like 14, 15%. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how he gets up to 27. I don't know how that happens. I mean, I get the Derrick Henry. I get James Conner. I get Charbonnet. I had about that. I mean, that was kind of like late news on Saturday. I mean, I played a lot of Charbonnet, and it turns out if you told people before the slate that Zach Charbonnet would have a 100% of the running back touches for the Seahawks in a game that goes to overtime, he probably should be more owned than 11%.
Yeah, you just lock him in that point. Like the J.K. Dobbins ownership is insane, and what it is is groupthink and people saying Carolina sucks.
What group?
I think that we can.
What's the group? What's the group? People have to let me know in on this group.
I don't know, but it's got to be groupthink. It has to be like there's got to be some group, some tout group that is talking a whole bunch about like just use running backs against Carolina, because there's no reason why J.K.
Why not Gus Edwards? Why? I mean, it's not like they only have one.
No. Let's be clear that there are some people that said Gus Edwards, but like everybody's going to play the running back that had 130 yards the week before. Like nobody's going to play Gus Edwards. Running backs versus Carolina group. Exactly. Yeah. I just think that I think we should expect anytime that there's a running back that has more than about 60% of the share of the team's rushing attempts, I think we should just boost them in ownership like 10% against Carolina. We're just going to see it all year.
Well, it's also recency bias. I mean, week 2 is one of my favorite weeks because everyone looks at week 1 and goes, oh, it must happen again. I mean, it's not. I didn't play any Alan Lazard in my 20 lineups in GPP. Like, good luck. Have fun with that.
Did you play him in cash? Did you play him in
cash?
cash?
I did play him in cash on DraftKings. I mean, but the cash doesn't matter. I need a punt. In order to make it work, you need a $3,300 wide receiver. Whatever.
I'm sure he was like 60% owned in cash. I didn't play cash this last
course. I mean, because that's how roster construction and cash is on draft.
I thought when I was looking at ownership trends for Lazard and he was climbing, I was in on him as a 7% owned, like maybe he can do it again play. But then by Sunday, when he was projected for 15% owned, I was like, out on that. I'm not going to touch 15% owned Alan Lazard.
Yeah, he came in the middle. He is 11% owned in the middle. Yeah. There's so many other 33. I mean, my goal in my lineups was to not play a cheap wide receiver at all. Like usually, Rashid at 4,600 would be my cheapest like wide receiver in my lineup. The thing is that you need to still punt at tight end, and you need to punt at defense. And I just used Schoonmaker because I was playing all the Cowboys lineups. Mm-hmm. So at wide receiver, were there any kind of surprises ownership wise on wide receiver? I mean, I'm looking down. I mean, did I expect Cooper Kupp to be 51% owned? No, I expected him to be 40% owned. I didn't. I mean, Neighbors I had in this range. Godwin I had a little bit lower. Godwin I had in like 18 to 20. Debo in this range. Rashi in this range. I expected I expected CeeDee Lamb to be lower owned. I expected CeeDee Lamb to be single digit owned. I expected him to be 8 to 10% owned. So he came in a little bit higher than I expected. But nothing. I mean, nothing that really stands that out to me. That too low owned. I mean, once we get down into 6% owned wide receivers, it's not like. I mean, did I expect Marvin Harrison to be 3.6% owned? Yeah, I did. Right. Mm-hmm. We go down here, but I mean, the people that scored well. I mean, these are the guys that you take shots on, right? DK Metcalf. We go down. Let's look at the points. I mean, Calvin Ridley. I mean, like when this is the reason why I don't like taking like cheap $3,200, $3,500 guys.
Yeah, these guys aren't going to get you that ceiling.
Right. I want guys in the 5 to 6K range that have like they have some games where they go 2 for 10. Yeah. Right. Or 2 for they have not many receptions, but if one of those receptions is a 67-yard touchdown, then that's all that matters. Right. Or just good receivers in bad matchups, right? Justin Jefferson, 8,300. Devontae Adams, 7,300, right? But everyone else, you take a look at Calvin Ridley, it's like, sure, he can hit a bomb, right? Marvin Harrison, apparently he's not slow anymore after the week 1 that everyone said he was slow. And Malik to me, Malik Neighbors I'm gonna guess by the end of the season, Malik Neighbors is nearly an 8K receiver. That plays for a bad team. It'll be similar. He'll be similar. He'll be looked at similar like Devontae. We look at Devontae Adams with Gardner Minshew there and go, do we really want to play a guy attached to the Raiders offense? But if he's catching, 8 passes for 100 yards all the time, who cares? Mm-hmm. Right. Same for Justin Jefferson. We can take a look at that now also and say, is that great of a team? So I look at Malik Neighbors at 5,900 and say, is he the type of guy in the 5 to 6K range that could break? Like, I look at Chris Godwin and go, okay, Chris Godwin, in order to get there, needs to get 7 receptions in the first half in order to get there, right? Is he going to do that? Well, he did it, but Malik Neighbors could get there in like 1 or 2 plays. That's the reason why I played him. But also in the Millie, he was 17% owned. And in your contest, he was 31% owned. So I can understand Neighbors being a little over. At that point, you might as well play DK Metcalf. I'm assuming in the 150, DK Metcalf was like 1% owned.
I think it was less than 1% owned. He was in the winner. I can actually check.
Because he was 2% owned in the Millie.
1.4% owned. Jackson Smith Najigba was 0.6% owned. Devontae Adams was 0.9% owned.
Right.
Geno Smith was 0.3% owned. He might have been in 4 lineups in the one.
Right.
Yeah, from an ownership standpoint, I was really, really surprised. Like Malik Neighbors, I had at I think 9% owned, 10% owned.
No, I think you were off. He was never going to be that low.
Well, I was off on a couple of them. So
if you had, hold on, James.
Yeah.
What did you project Malik Neighbors for if you had his ownership at 9% and you're like, no, can't play that guy?
I had his ownership at 11%.
What was his player? What did you have as his mean projection fantasy point
was? 14.7.
And how did you? I mean, that's a little lower than other places, but still 9% to not play that. I mean, that's not over-owned for that.
Well, I mean, so I don't just take median projection into account there. Like, got to take there are a couple different things. Take into account historical, team total, matchup, stuff like that. Those are the other 3 main weights. So his median projection was fine, but when compared with a bunch of other like kind of mid-range wide receivers, like Chris Godwin was going to come in way higher at 6K. Deebo Samuel at 6,800 was going to take ownership. Cooper Kupp was going to take a bunch of ownership. There was going to be a larger focus, according to my models, on running backs in the flex, because we had a whole bunch of running backs that were going to take ownership, and especially them in the 5 to 6K range. So he was kind of getting squeezed out there a little bit. Also, didn't think that people would have as much confidence in Daniel Jones getting Malik Neighbors there at 5,900. I mean, even against Washington, like there just wasn't a lot of confidence there. So, and also he came in at 17.6%. Let's not act like 11% is drastically lower than that. Like it's lower, but come on, like across the industry, he was projected at like 14% ownership. Let's not act like 11%.
Right. Well, that's why I said I had him at like 15%. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I think, I mean, obviously Cooper Kupp is really, really surprising, but the one that I am more surprised by is Chris Godwin at 23% owned. Or no, not Chris Godwin. I had him high. Who's the one that I was looking at that was weird here? So Mike Evans? Yeah, I had Mike Evans way lower.
Mike Evans is 14%.
Yeah, I had him at like
I have him at like 8%.
Yeah, I had him way lower. The one that I was right on that I think the industry was low on was CeeDee Lamb. I had CeeDee Lamb projected at like 17.6%. So he came in pretty much like right where I expected him to be.
And I had him much lower. That's why I was playing him. Yeah. Right. I had the Saints at almost no ownership. So like it's like give me, and also quarterback wise. I mean, if you just take a look stack wise, I mean, Dak Prescott, I mean, I had it 5% owned. So I mean that came in right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th highest owned quarterback. The 2 highest owned quarterbacks were Daniels and Mayfield.
Yeah, that's really surprising. I had Patrick Mahomes as projected as the highest at like 14%.
Right.
And I did not have Baker Mayfield that high. I had Baker Mayfield around 6%. And people were just like, nope, going to play the cheaper guy. There were some people that were saying that Mayfield was going to get steamed up. And that definitely came through.
No, I thought that whole game, I thought the Bucks-Lions game would be over-owned.
I thought that it would be owned. I did think that it would be owned. That's why I overstacked it. Because I didn't want, I mean, you and I had similar thoughts on it. I didn't want to play
one. You just chose to overstack in one of your lineups. I just chose to stack them all out and just play other things.
Yeah. It was the same thing. It was the same thoughts with the Rams. where like I really the only ways that I played the Rams, I played Kyron Williams instead of Cooper Kupp in a lineup. I played a Ram stack instead of individual players because I want to take advantage of if everybody thinks that all these wide receivers are going to get there, then if they all get there, then Matthew Stafford had an incredible game. So stack it up instead. I'm not going to play those guys one-off. So
the question is why didn't we play Hunter Henry at 3,800? Apparently Hunter Henry is Jacoby Brissett is just going to just constantly throw to that guy. Brock Bowers in his second game is apparently Tony Gonzalez. So we should be piling in on him. And the other thing is Travis Kelce is more washed than Zach Ertz now.
Well, I mean, Travis Kelce was going to be washed this season. Anybody who thought that he was going to come out of this offseason and be like still the same, y'all just don't pay attention.
Did you consider with the late news that Evan Ingram was injured in warmups that you was going to play Brenton Strange for 2,500?
No, I didn't
care that much about that.
No, I paid up at tight ends this week. I had Brock Bowers, I had Trey McBride, and I had Sam Laporta. So I didn't pay down at tight end. I thought the tight end overall. I mean, we talked about last week how tight end, like you think that it's going to be more likely that paying down is the right way to go about things. And I said that elite tight ends are still going to have their opportunities to win slates. Brock Bowers, very similar, I think. Brock Bowers this week was the exact same situation we had with Kyle Pitts last week, where at 4,500, if you think that Brock Bowers is an elite tight end, he's $1,500 underpriced. So take advantage now. And the only difference is that Brock Bowers this week was only 11% owned, whereas Kyle Pitts, for whatever reason, last week was 23% owned. So you get a little bit of an ownership discount on the exact same situation. But Mike, no, I didn't.
Right. We can't play Kelce until he breaks up with Taylor Swift.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's clear. That's so clear. I don't. Anybody who is like, oh, Travis Kelce is going to come out of this offseason where he's been traveling on tour with the largest like actor or singer in the world, going on like worldwide tours and going on bar tours and stuff like that, and is going to come out of that offseason past his like age peak. Like he's old in consideration.
He's 35 years old, right? He's not young.
He's an old man at this point. So anybody who thought that he was going to come into his 2024 season at like an elite tight end, I have no idea how you thought that. Like you're just not paying attention to the world.
Can I LOL on this, please?
Yes, you can.
LOL the 13% owned Isaiah Likely at 4,800.
Yeah, I mean, overreactions in week one are hilarious.
Yeah, of course. Like I had no consideration of playing Isaiah Likely at 4,800 at all. No. Literally. Like
no, absolutely not.
But I didn't mind Schoonmaker. Like to me, the tight end play that I wanted to play, I played the most of was Luke Schoonmaker, rookie tight end for the Cowboys, filling in for Jake Ferguson, and his player archetype is that Dalton Schultz just okay. Sure. That and the other tight ends they have on their roster are all like garbage blocker guys.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine, especially if you sack Dallas. He was fine. Whatever. The way that I went into this week was mostly like you're either going to play an elite tight end or you're just going to pair with your quarterback. So whatever you got to do, like I don't tight end. I think that tight end is probably outside of defense. Tight end is the position that people like pay way too much attention to when it comes to how they're picking them. You just treat it like a catcher in baseball. Is it going to be an elite catcher or is it going to be part of your 5-man? Move on. That there's nothing more.
That's pretty much what I did. I typically. My DAC lineups, my Daniel Jones tight end, right? Whoever's there, as long as they're 3K or less, right? Just if they catch a touchdown, they get 7-8 points. Everything else works out fine. It's not going to matter that much. Or I'm playing Trey McBride, or I'm playing, I'm playing a guy that has a pulse.
Do you think, let me ask you a question. Do you think that pairing with your QB should be mostly reserved for cheaper tight ends? Or do you think that you want to do it with, or I guess let me rephrase this. Do you think that elite tight ends are a better stack piece or individual piece?
Individual.
You think individual? Okay. I'm inclined to think the same
they
way.
could win the position. Like, you have to think of two things. If you stat like Prescott, Lamb, Schoonmaker is Cowboys go off. Lamb has 36 fantasy points. Prescott has 30 fantasy points. Schoonmaker has 8. Right? Right? Like it's not, it doesn't matter at that. It doesn't matter because everyone has gone, like, they're going to be 5 other tight ends that scored more than that. You know, there's going to be a 20-point tight end there, but that 20-point tight end at 6K can't fit in the lineup that I'm building with Lamb and Breece Hall. And, you know, like, it's like you can't play a tight end like that in that type of lineup. So the 8 points is fine, but I need CeeDee Lamb to have 36 fantasy points in that scenario. Or you're single stacking you're doing Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors, and then playing Trey McBride, because he could win. If he gets 25 points at tight end and most tight ends only have 8 points, that means a lot to you, which means Daniel Jones doesn't need 30 fantasy points anymore. He just needs 15 or 18. I mean, Daniel Jones was in the winning Millie lineup.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Cheap quarterback. A lot of times, cheap quarterback is going to land in the Millie winner a lot more often than you think on weeks where there isn't a quarterback and a stack that you need. Like Kyler, sure, Marvin Harrison did well, but I mean, to pay for Murray, Harrison, and McBride, you couldn't make a lineup that scored 200 fantasy points. I mean, obviously you could find these 1% owned guys, but I mean, like, it's just tough to build a $6,600 quarterback, $6,900 wide receiver, 6K tight end. You know what? You end up like, if you were prescient on playing Quentin Johnston in your lineup, sure, then you could do it. But it's like these 3K wide receivers just do not get there enough of the time that even when they have a good game, let's take a look. Like, where is Minnesota? Jalen Naylor was 3,900.
Yeah.
He scored 14 points.
Yeah. I had him in a lineup.
Right. Which is fine. I mean, we could take a Quentin Johnston, 22 at 4,100. Okay, now you're getting there. Now you're starting to get there. Right?
But he was 4K plus. He wasn't a 3K wide receiver.
Right. But no, on Squirrel had him on FanDuel, because at FanDuel he was 5,100. I mean,
he's a time traveler. He doesn't count.
Right. But I'm just saying that these cheap wide receivers just do not get there often enough that you need your high end players to really hit it. You need Kamara's 47 points, right? You need that type of ceiling. You need that type of stuff. That I'm just much more likely, if I'm going to play that cheap of a guy, just play him in the tight end spot where not many tight ends score that many points anyway. And let me make sure to get wide receivers that have 30-point upside in my lineup no matter what. Like, I'm much more likely to do that. I was more likely. I did play some DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson in my lineups, but only because I wasn't playing Cooper Kupp. Right. So it's like, if Cooper Kupp fails and the Rams still pass the ball, who benefits? If I could get 15 points from them, it makes my lineups work, type of thing. Just turns out that the Rams just don't work at all. Turns out, and even then, Kyron Williams still got a median result that didn't kill you. He was fine.
Yeah, I asked that question, and I am inclined to agree. And the point of, it's really cheap wide receivers versus cheap tight ends when you're making that decision. And that's one of those things where on the slates where you do go double tight end, which is very rare that you ever actually do that. The reason why you do it is because there are so many spend ups at both running back and wide receiver that you just pay down at flex. And the consistent pay down of like 10 to 15 fantasy points, like these tight ends that actually get end zone targets, those guys are almost more valuable on a consistent basis than the wide receivers who get the deep targets that are like $3,300. I'm sure that we will have one slate this year where people are like, oh, well, it's a double tight end because we need to pay down at flex so that we can afford I'm going to look forward in the time here. Breece Hall, who's 9,100. Christian McCaffrey, who's 9,200. Malik Neighbors, who's 8K. And CeeDee Lamb, who's 8,500. Like, people want to fit all of those guys with Dak Prescott at 7,300. That's a lineup that's going to be built later on this year. And people are going to be like, well, the only way that we can afford it is to pay down at tight end and have another tight end that's cheap in the flex. And they'll use like the Cardinals defense or something against, I don't know, Baltimore, something like that. And people will try to jump.
That's never going to happen, James. There's going to be at least 6 or 7 injuries every week that there's going to be some 5K or 4K guy that just steps into her, that they made the pricing. And I mean, look, Pacheco's going to be out for 4 weeks now, right? We got, who knows what's happening with Cooper Kupp. I'm not sure if we're playing the Rams anyway. I mean, who else got injured?
Pacheco's going to be out for longer than that. Fractured fibula ain't a month.
Right. But Jefferson is knocked up, and good luck to your, people. Good luck to your best ball bags.
It's almost as if when they removed being able to like make contact in practice, and when they removed a full preseason game and they made it so these guys have to come in cold in an off season, that more injuries would happen. It's almost as if the human body needs to be tempered to deal with the damage that you deal with in football. That's a whole other rant. But
right.
Like,
well, I mean, I think it's even simpler. It's almost as if football is a very dangerous, contact-heavy sport to begin with.
That too. No, I absolutely agree. But like this whole thing about injuries, like with baseball, I think that with the pitcher like issues, that's because the human body is being pushed to limits that it just absolutely should not be at. Like humans should probably not be able to throw a ball 105 miles an hour on a consistent basis. Like your arm's just going to fall apart. Right. When it comes to football, we've been playing football basically the same way and in a more like brutal manner for most of it for the better part of 50 years. And the amount of injuries that we have now, I think mostly comes down to we have tried to remove a lot of the brutality out of the preparation so that people aren't getting injured in practice or people aren't getting injured in the preseason or whatever. And it's just like that's a recipe for now the body has no idea how to deal with being hit by a 360-pound man who's probably on steroids. Like it's bad. It's bad news bears, man. I played football for a long time. And if you didn't have a full week of practice, like it hurts a lot more to get hit on Sunday.
So do you think Tua should play another snap, or should he
Absolutely retire? Yes. 100%. I want 100%. We saw so Andrew Luck was the most recent one of quarterback who was very talented and decided to retire because of injuries. And he's much happier now. Luke Kuechly, who I loved, is my favorite player on the Panthers for many years. He retired because of concussions. And the last concussion that he got, I remember I was watching the game and he was on the cart being carried off the field crying, just sobbing because he knew that his career was over. And that's just, you got to take care of your brain, man. I'm like tearing up a little bit thinking about it, but athletes need to take care of themselves and like think about life after football. Tua's made plenty of money. You can kind of just retire and take care of your head and take care of your health and don't kill yourself, Sorry, that's the deepest that I think I'll ever.
I know, but I mean, I'm expecting him to play again.
I think he will play again, and I don't think that he should. I think that he should take a page out of Andrew Luck and Luke Kuechly's book and understand that his, there's no honor in martyrdom. You don't have to kill yourself.
What Tua should do, James, Tua should retire, but since he knows so much about the NFL, he should just play DFS and bet on sports and stuff, and maybe become a contributor here at RotoGrinders, like all of our experts here. And to get access to that, we're running a special right now, NFL Premium, $15 off. So go $15 off your first month. So try NFL Premium. Maybe we're gonna hire when he retires. We'll hire Tua. Tua will be on the show. It'll be Tuesdays with Tua, James. It'll be right Mondays with McCool and Tuesdays with Tua, right? We need to find someone who can retire that has the W in their name. Is there a Wesley or something? Is there a William? What are the
Wes Welker? Wes Welker.
Yes, no, current player, not a former player.
Oh, a current player?
Yeah, not W with
Well, so after Tua retires, then we can say, hey, Jalen Waddle, you don't have a quarterback anymore. You don't want
okay.
to
What Wednesdays with Waddle? Okay, all the Dolphins come, right? It's Wednesdays. It's Wednesdays with Waddle, Thursdays with Tyreek, right? And then Fridays with who else is on the Dolphins with an F? I just want to get Foster Moreau. I don't care. I like Foster Moreau, so I'm just gonna get him from the Saints. Fridays with Foster or something like that.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. James, people can find you at paydirdfs.com.
Yeah, paydirdfs.com. I just put together a big breakdown of week 2, and all the short form articles are available to go read over there as well. The last couple weeks. So go catch up on things and come join the community. Jump in the Discord. Discord's free to join and a lot of fun. So
you could join the RotoGrinders Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. And we got MLB today. We still got MLB going on. We still got 2.5 weeks more of that. So Grinders Live will be on with the guys later today, 5 p.m. Eastern, followed by Crunch Time with Kevin Roth, giving you all the weather updates that you'll need to know. And I'll see you tomorrow. I believe Taylor's on tomorrow. Tim's on tomorrow.
Plus, now live Food for Thought with Will and Justin Carlucci and Britt Devine guesting this week as for a early sleeper look ahead for week 3. And we got the Showdown pre-lock show with Chop and 200K Richer Squirrel as well.
There you go. See TJ with the schedule in front of him. That's great.
Man, TJ's so good. He's so good at this.
Right. So make sure to check that out. Always hit the notification bell. You'll know everything that goes live on this channel. So do that, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be probably looking at the baseball slate tomorrow, right? And then Wednesday, first look for NFL. Thursday, props and pick'em for NFL. Friday, GPP strategy for NFL. It's mostly NFL, but tomorrow will be MLB. So I'll see you then, because I'm always here. Monday through Fridays, 11 o'clock Eastern. Talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.